Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Next Review. So for this video, we are going to launch a web application. We're going to launch a simple web application using Apache Web Server. And so we're going to do this on using AWS or Amazon Web Services. Um, so I'm currently on the console, on the Amazon console, on the AWS console. And so I'm going, first we're gonna create a virtual private cloud or VPC, and that's where everything is gonna be housed. And once we have our VPC created, we're going to create our EC2 instance, and we're going to launch the EC2 instance within our virtual private cloud. And once we have that done, we're going to SSH or log into our instance we're gonna do this through Visual Studio Code. And we're gonna log in and we're gonna install our Apache application. And once we have that done, we're going to test websites through the browser. And I'm going to use a sample template and so that we can have something that looks nice. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin. So we are located in the North Virginia region. So you can see here, up here, it says North Virginia. So you can click on the down arrow and see the different regions that I have available where I can create resources. And so I'm gonna go ahead and click on create VPC. I'm already in the VPC service. So you can, if I have some of them already saved, but if you don't see anything, you can always search here, VPC, and then it'll come up and then you'll click on it. And then it'll take you to the VPC service. So I'm gonna go ahead and create VPC. So we have two options available. We can do VPC only, in which case you only creating the VPC and you go ahead and give all the details. For my case, I'm going to select the VPC and more options so I can create both the VPC, the subnets, and we're gonna have the route table created for us. And I'm gonna name everything here, everything at once. So it's a more simpler or maybe more convenient way to doing this. So I'm gonna click VPC and more. I'm going to unselect auto generate so I can name all my the resources myself. So I'm going to unselect this and I'll come back to this one. So here, this is the CIDR block. And it's going to, so it has pretty much it's going to have the range of the IP address for our VPC network. Okay, so this is 10.0.0.0.16. And so /16. So this is the number of available IP address we can have within this network, within this VPC. So I'm just going to leave that as default. So I'm just going to use this. I can change it if I want to, but I'm just going to use the default one. So we're not using any IPv6, so we're just going to use IPv4. Tenancy, I'm going to leave it at default. The default option means that my resources will be created in a share physical infrastructure or physical hardware. If I can click dedicated, for dedicated, it means that you only want your resources to be created on a dedicated hardware system. So you don't want to share anything essentially. So you want to have which is good for some folks who might prefer it for security reasons. But for our case, we're just going to select defaults because obviously the default is cheaper compared to having a dedicated tenancy. So we're just going to keep it at default. Number of availability zones. So the availability zones are within the region, or the AWS region. So for North Virginia, there are 6 different availability zones. So you have ES. Let me see if we can customize here. It can show you the different availability zones. You have US East 1A, you have C, you have D, E, F. So this one, and you also have US East 1B. Okay, so I'm just going to select one. And so we're just gonna use one availability zone. So because we only created one EC2 instance, we don't need any complications for this particular case. But this can be good for maybe redundancy and things like that. But for our case, for just a demonstration purpose, we're just gonna keep it simple and we're gonna create our one EC2 instance just in a single availability zone. So we're gonna launch it. Let me just launch it in US East 1A. And number of public subnets is just going to be 1. So we need to launch this in a public subnet because we are going to want to access this through the browser or via the internet. So it has to be publicly accessible. And then we're not going to use any private subnets. And this is something that's more common for backend resources or database or things like that, that you don't want to have made to, you don't want it to be available to the internet, to the open web. So, but for our case, we're going to access this. We're going to access entry to this. So we're going to have it in a public subnet. So we use one public subnet. We're not going to use the private subnet. And we also, since we're not using a private subnet, we're not going to choose any NAT gateways. So we're just going to leave that at none. And we're also not going to use any S3s, so we can just go to none. So we don't want to use any VPC endpoints for S3 gateway. And so now let's go back on top and name our resources. So VPC, I'm going to call this Apache. I'm going to call this Apache VPC. So the subnets, so let me just copy this. I'm just gonna keep the same naming convention. So I'm the subnets, I'm gonna call this Apache VPC, SN for subnet. Route table, I'm gonna call this Apache VPC, OT for route table. And for the internet gateway, so we need this IGW so that this gives us access to the open web. So I'm gonna keep the same naming convention. I'm just gonna add IGW for short for internet gateway. So we have our names. Now let's go ahead. Let's just double check, make sure we have everything that we want. So we have the starter block. We have no IPv6. We have a default tenancy or otherwise shared tenancy. We have a single availability zone in US East 1A. We're gonna use one public subnet and no private subnets. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our VPC. So now it's launching, it's creating our VPC. Okay, so it's done. We can say view VPC. So we can see it's available. And now we can also click here to see the VPC that we have. So we have other VPCs here that I had created also, but so this is the one we just created. It's called Apache VPC. So this is the one we're gonna use to launch our EC2 instance. Okay, so let's go ahead and so I'm just gonna duplicate this step and go ahead and now I'm gonna go ahead and create our EC2, launch our EC2 instance. So I'm gonna go to switch to EC2, or you can search EC2 here as well. You can search EC2 in case you don't have it saved. I click EC2, and this is gonna take me to my EC2 resource, to my EC2 service rather. So I'm gonna click on, so we have running instances. You can go down and click where it says launch instance. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on that. And so we're gonna launch our EC2 instance or our virtual machine. So this is the name. I'm gonna keep a similar naming convention. I'm gonna call it Apache. I'll call this Apache virtual machine. Okay, so for the image, for the AMI, I'm gonna choose Amazon Linux. This is free, Amazon Linux 2022 AMI. So this is free tier eligible. So I'm gonna stay on the free side. And architecture, I'm gonna leave it at 64-bit. The instance type, I'm also just going to leave that T2 micro. This is also free tier eligible. So you do just note you do have different instance types, and it gives you different capacities for the resources. So let's say this one is like one CPU, 1 GB of memory. So you have like different stuff. You say T2 Nano, you have one CPU, 0.5 GB of memory. So you have the different capacities for the different instance type. So we're just gonna go with T2 Micro, free, as it's free. It's a free tier eligible item. Okay, so we're going to create a key pair. So this key pair, we needed to log in into the instance. Okay, so we're not gonna use a password. We're gonna use a key to log in. So I'm gonna use the username and a key. So I'm gonna create a key pair here, private key. So RSA, just gonna use the default to SSH. So for open SSH, the .pem. So I'm gonna give the name. I'm gonna give it Apache key. I'm gonna call it Apache key. I'm gonna say create key pair. So now our key pair is downloaded. So for the networks, I'm gonna click on edit so I can choose the VPC that we just created. So so currently it's set at default. So I'm gonna click here and go find our VPC. Here we go. It's Apache VPC. So I'm gonna select it. And then so there's already, if you remember, we also created a subnet when we were creating the VPC. So there's only one subnet within this VPC. So that's the only one that's actually shown. If you click here, you don't see any other subnet available. So this is the only one created. So it's already selected it for us. So I'm going to click on enable public IP because we need a public IP so we can to log in into our instance. Also we're gonna need it to when we test our application on the web. So we're gonna use the public IP to access websites. Okay, so we need the public IP assignment to be enabled. So security group, I'm going to create a new one just so we can see the process. So I'm gonna create a new one. So I'm going to call this Apache SG for security group. So security group is essentially, like it says, if the firewall. So with the security group, we're going to define the ports that we're going to have open for our instance. So we're gonna have certain ports open. So in our case, we're going to open port number 22 for SSH and port number 8080 or 80, port number 80 for HTTP. That will be so we can access our application to the browser, because that's the port number for HTTP. So we have that. So for the description, we could just set, I'm gonna say allow SSH and HTTP. Okay, HTTP. Okay. Inbound rule. So for the inbound rule, which meaning the traffic that's coming into the instance. So SSH, this is we need this one to log into the instance. So SSH port 22. And the source or where the traffic is going to be coming from, it's going to be coming from our local machine. Or so we're going to select my IP. So it's going to come from my own IP address. And we need one more security rule. We need to add the one for HTTP. So I'm going to go ahead and find HTTP and select it. So it's here. So that's port 80. And the source is just going to be, we're going to access this to the open web. So I'm going to click anywhere, meaning anybody can go and access the website. So the starter block for that is 0, 0, 0, so 0, 0, 0, 0 /0. Okay. And then, so we have the ports, we define our ports for the security group. And now let's go down so we can configure our storage. Well, I'm just gonna leave it, since we're just doing something simple, I'm just gonna leave it at 8 GB. we're only launching one application, so this should be just fine for our case. And then I'm just gonna leave the advanced details at defaults, and I'm gonna go ahead and launch. So let me just move this away. Let me move this on top. So I'm gonna go ahead and launch our instance. So now the instance is launching. It says success. So we can click on this, and then it will take us to, or you can, so you can click on that, you can take on and click on the instance where it says instance. So you can click instance here. So we see this is the one we just launched. It's called Apache-VM, and it's currently pending. So it's not done setting up here. So we can click on refresh to see if it's done. Okay. So now it's running. It's now running state. So we can go ahead and try to connect. So I'm gonna click on connect. I'm gonna click on this square, and then I'm gonna go ahead and click connect here. And then it's currently set up. It's so we have to make sure we click on the SSH client, but it's already selected, so we don't have to click on it again. And then we're gonna go ahead and copy our this command, SSH command. So so if you just to explain a little bit, so we have the SSH. So we're using the key. This is the key that we created. So we're gonna use this key, which already got downloaded to our local machine. So Apache key PAM. So that's the key that it's going to use. So this is the user that's been created. The default user is EC2-user, and this is our DNS. So we're gonna use that to, or we can also use just the public IP instead of this. We can just replace it with a public IP. Same thing. That will also help us to log into SSH. So I'm just gonna copy this, and I'm gonna go ahead to I'm going to switch to Visual Studio Code. So again, I'm already inside the download. So this is where I have my key. So depending on where you have your key, you have to go to that particular folder so you can have it. So you can make sure, because the place where you're running the command is going to search for that key in that directory, in that current directory. So you have to make sure you have your key. So I'm gonna let's just make sure we have the key in there. So I have a whole bunch of stuff here. So let's see, it's called what was it called? We call it Apache key. Oh, so this is it right here. Apache key.pem. So we have it. So that's good. So I'm gonna paste that command, and I'm gonna click on OK. And I'm gonna say yes. It says, are you sure you want to continue connecting? So I'm gonna say yes, so I can connect to my instance. So it's okay. So now it's connected. So we have an EC2 user with the IP address. And so I'm gonna, okay. But again, just a note, this is a private IP address. This is not actually our public IP. To get our public IP, I'm gonna need to do, let's see, we can do rf config. And I believe is the command is that me. Let's see. Let's see which command we can use. No, not this one. Okay, that's not a command. I think it's okay. So it's Coral. I think it's Coral ident. We use something called Coral ident me. Okay, and this one. So now this is a public IP. So 44.2.2.133 and 94. So that's the one we're gonna use eventually to go to the browser and test access to our website. Okay. And of course, we can also just go to the AWS console and we can also find it there. But if you want to get it through the console, you can use this command. There are other commands as well, but this is one command that you can use called ident me, and it'll give you the public IP of your instance. Okay, so let me just point it out where you can get it at on the console. just a quick note. So if you go ahead, so this is our instance. If you click on it, so this is where you can also find it the same thing. So that's our public app. That's the one we're gonna use. We're gonna run that on the webs on the browser. So let's just so since we haven't installed our Apache application yet, let's just see what we get if we run this, if we paste this and run this IP on the browser. Just to see. So currently, as you can see, we're not getting any response. So now we're gonna go ahead and install our application. And then we're gonna come back and test this again and see what happens. So let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. So now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna install Apache application. So I'm gonna elevate. I'm gonna sudo -I to elevate my permission to root. Now you can see I'm root. So this just allows me to, it gives me permission to do all the commands that I want to run. So we want to install the Apache web application, the web server application. So for this case, for the Amazon Linux, this is called HTTPD. It's not actually Apache, as it will be the case, something like Ubuntu. So we're gonna the package manager is called yum, so it's yum install. We're gonna do run the command called yum install HTTP, and then I'm gonna add -y. This just means that whenever, let me just remove the -y just so it's clear, so it's easier to explain what the -y actually means. So I'm gonna do yum install HTTPD. I'm gonna press enter, and now if you see, now it's asking us, so it has downloaded, is a total download size is 2.3 megabytes, install size. It's asking us, is this okay? Okay, now I'm gonna say Y for yes. Click on, okay. So by now, let me just record a command so I want to explain what I was trying to do earlier. So if I were to do -y, it would have done the same thing without asking me to press Y for OK to approve. So it would have just gone ahead and then approve everything. So if you don't add the -y option, it's going to stop and ask you to approve before it proceeds. So that's what the -y means. Okay, so we have that installed. So to see if it's actually installed, we have to use the command system ctl, and then so we have the system ctl. We can do status to see if it's running or not. System ctl status httpd. So now let's see. We can see our httpd service, and it says loaded, and it's disabled. It's inactive. So it's inactive, meaning it's not running. Okay. So if it's running, it will say like running or something, or active. So currently it's inactive, so it's not actually running. And disable. So this disable means that, let's say once we have it running, disable means that if we power off the virtual machines and then we power it back on, disable means it's not going to come back on a running state. So if you wanted to you want the application to restore and begin to run again, once you restart your VM, your virtual machines, you have to make sure this thing is enabled so that once the VM is restarted, it's gonna also begin to run the application as soon as it comes up. So now we're gonna go ahead and start the application. So I'm gonna record the same command. So now instead of status, I'm gonna do start httpd. And then if I recall, I'm just using the up arrow to record a command. So if I do status again, and I'll go back here, now you can see it says active, and in parentheses is running. So now the application is actually running. Okay. And now, so we want this to be enabled. Okay. Well, it just depends on you, but you want it to be enabled just to see if you restore this VM, it's going to come back. It's going to begin to run the Apache application again, the server again. So I'm going to record the command, and I'm going to say enable. enable HTTPD. And let me just clear the screen so it's easier to see everything. So if I recall, I'll go back and run a status command again to see what everything looks like. Again, our application is running, but now if you notice here, it says enabled instead of disabled. It says now enabled. Okay, so that's what we want. So if we restart this VM and it comes back up, this is also going to come back up running. So we have this running, so we can go back and so let's get our public IP. So we do coral idents.me. So we have a public IP. I'm gonna go and copy this. I'm gonna copy a public IP address. I'm gonna go ahead. Well, actually, we already have it here anyway, so I didn't have to copy it again. So we can just reload. So I'm gonna go in and reload and see if we can now access the application. And go ahead. Okay, so now you see it says it works, meaning now we can, this is just a default message we have. So now we can access this web application to the browser. Okay, we're using this public IP address. So we're now hosting a website in a sense. But to make this a little nice, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna download a template, a website template, just to have something that looks even better. So let's go ahead on Google, visit our good friend Google, and then I'm gonna use a free template. So let's try to use one of the free CSS templates. So, I mean, we have a number of them, but we can just go ahead and choose one. So let's just go ahead. I'm going to click on this. I'm just going to use that for an example. So I'm going to right click on download, and I'm going to copy the link address. So here, copy link address. And now I'm going to go back to our terminal. So now we have to install this. We have to download this at a particular location in Apache. Okay. And that location is var www.html. So this is where we're gonna go. We're gonna go here and we're gonna make sure we have all those folders. We're gonna use a command called wget or webget. So it's wget, and then we're gonna download all those information, those files. We're gonna download those files for that simple website in this directory. And then once Apache comes back to get a page to display on the website, once somebody makes a request, it's gonna get that simple website, the simple template, and display that instead of that just it works that we saw earlier. So we're gonna go ahead in this directory. I'm gonna just do cd. So let's see what we have here. So it's not showing anything. So I'm gonna use the command wget, and now I'm gonna paste the address that I just copied for the sample page. Okay, so that's, and let me move this thing down so we can see better. So I'm gonna click OK. Okay, so we have all of these files downloaded here. So now if I click ls to list the content, so we see this is the zip file that we just downloaded. So we have this aux.zip. Okay, so I'm gonna use the unzip command so I can extract the files. So I'm gonna do unzip, and then that's, so it's gonna zip it. So let me clear the screen so we don't have all this mess on the screen. I'll do ls again. So now we have this. So I'm like, now I can delete this one. We no longer need this zip file. We're just gonna use that. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete. So I'm gonna do remove -r f and then O, and then I'm just gonna press tab and then tab again. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete this zip folder. Now it should be gone. Okay, so now we just have this. Now let's just see what files we have inside. So we can do ls and then O. So these are the files that we have. Okay, so we have all this about, blog, class, CSS, image, index. Okay. So the files that the files that Apache is going to use is this. This is this file that has the main code for this website. So Apache is going to target this particular file index.html to begin to display things on the browser when somebody makes a request. But we want these, so we want all these files, we want all the files to be located here in this directory in HTML. We have to take all the files that are here, because currently all these files are within this file here, this folder here. So we have to take all the files out of the folder and then place them here, place them and inside HTML. So take them out of this folder. That's what we want to do. And to do that, we have to run a move command. So move everything, from that. Okay, so move. And then we're going to, so the folder that we're going into is LOX dash that thing. So to implement this move command, so we just add the star. So this means that it's gonna go ahead and take all the files that are located within this folder, and it's gonna move them. So we want to move them all just at this same location. Okay. And to do that, so this is where it's going to get the files, and this is the second here is where we gonna place the files. Okay. So this just means the current directory, the // means it's gonna go ahead and place them all inside, because we're currently in HTML. So it's gonna place them inside the folder called HTML, the directory called HTML. So I'm gonna go ahead and press enter. Now I'm gonna press ls. So now you can see that I have these, so the files that I was looking at here, the about, blog, class, CSS, images, these are folders. So this content, index.js. Okay, so we have all of this now in at the same location as this. Okay, so now we can go ahead and delete this. We just want, these are the stuff that we need. So we no longer need this since we just emptied it already. So we can do ls to see what's left inside. So we shouldn't see anything in there. So now it's empty. Okay. So we can just delete it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do remove dash rf. And I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. So clear screen ls. So this is all what we need. So this is good. So now we can go back and reload the web browser. And now we're gonna be able to see our new websites. So it should look better now. So we essentially, once we reload the website, we're gonna see these websites right here instead of what we were seeing earlier. So instead of seeing it works, we're gonna see something that looks like this. Okay. So let's go ahead and reload and see if that works. Voila, 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 voila. So this is what we were trying to achieve. So we have officially and effectively, we have launched our web application, and we are hosting this on a server within AWS. And so you all can feel proud of yourself now. We've accomplished something. So yeah, so this is running it's running inside our virtual machine. So that's the address for the virtual machines. And so again, what did we do? We created a VPC, a virtual private cloud, and we created a subnet within the VPC. We went ahead and we launched a virtual machine in that subnet. We logged in with SSH into the virtual machine. We saw how to install Apache, how to store Apache, and we saw how we can even get sample static pages, a sample website template, and then use that to actually display something that looks nice on a browser. Okay, so that's what we accomplished. So hopefully you all learned something. And so yeah, so this concludes our video, our review for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.